passage from High and Holy Days, a book of Jewish wisdom for the month of Elul, on forgiveness. Being willing to point out our own errors of judgment or action, we bind ourselves to our own faults. Their courage to articulate disappointment in our actions is an indispensable prerequisite to self-improvement and refinement. We cannot afford to wait for the perfect, loving hero to inform us of our flaws. Instead, we rely on those around us to act as our early warning systems, pointing out moral failure and ethical obtuseness before it is too late to improve. And when they do, we must be able to really listen. And that was written by an American rabbi called Bradley Shavit Artson, and it comes from the section on forgiveness, and it was picked completely at random for tonight. So now my thought for the week. BBC Radio 4's flagship news and current affairs programme, Today, began just over a year after I was born, and it has consciously been part of my morning routine for over 50 years. I have listened to everyone who has presented the show and seen that diversify over the decades, and also heard first broadcasts by a cub reporter and their final broadcast 30 years later when they retired. Early this week, I heard a tiny bit of one story, and particularly the following sentence: full stops in a text message are sometimes seen as curt. What? I said aloud. Anyway, I did some online research and found that this stems from a group of Generation Z students in the US who said they found full stops intimidating. Generation Z, by the way, are those born between 1997 and 2012. And these sensitive souls feel that full stops indicate an abrupt or angry tone of voice. Oi a broch, as my bubba used to say. But it got me thinking about etiquette, polite behavior, and how it has changed over the years. When I was growing up, one of the most grievous behaviors was putting one's elbows on the table when eating, or indeed at any time. That, and how you held a knife and fork, meant that you could blend more easily in the higher social strata to which you obviously aspired. Other points of etiquette included speaking properly, giving up your seat on public transport to someone older than yourself, opening the door for a woman, although of course we said lady, to go through first, and showing respect for those older than yourself. These and many other issues of etiquette have faded over the intervening decades, and everything these days is much more relaxed. In some ways, that may be a good thing. Society has changed dramatically after all, in ways that could not, and indeed would not have been envisaged in the 1950s. Nevertheless, there are still modes of behavior that I choose to follow because I consider them to be acts of good manners, and they, by and large, do not change. I still open doors for women, or indeed older men, rather than going through myself. And were I suicidal enough to take public transport, I would still give up my seat if I saw someone who, for a range of reasons, needed it more than I did. I'm perfectly comfortable, I must say, with elbows on the table, though every time I do it, I have the Pavlovian response of hearing my father saying, elbows, in a slightly menacing tone. The closest analogy to good manners in Hebrew is Derech Eretz, which my spell checker, by the way, replaced with Derech Eretz, somewhat disrupting my train of thought. Literally, that means the way of the land. But in its applied sense, it covers respect, decency, concern for other people, and an ability not to put oneself at the center of everything. Samson Raphael Hirsch, a 19th century German rabbi and creator of modern Orthodox Judaism, called his movement Torah im Derech Eretz, a phrase that I have always liked and found very meaningful. To me, Torah im Derech Eretz is not just a description, but an instruction to those who lead and those who teach. There is no point in teaching something and despising those you teach. There is no point in being learned if you use your learning to humiliate other people who know less. There is no point in being overtly pious if behind closed doors you are anything but. There is no point in knowing everything about halakha if you uncaringly allow it to hamper and disadvantage the life of others. Torah im Derech Eretz, as it applies to all of us, is an excellent mantra and guide to how we should live our lives. It means showing respect to all. It means common decency. It means putting concern for others over concern for yourself. It means learning and putting that learning to good effect in our homes, our relationships, and our world. Amen.